Welcome learners to this TC session on the topic Review of Related Literature. Those who are doing the postgraduate diploma in higher education offered by the School of Education, for those students this session is going to be useful. However, those who are doing their postdoctoral studies, doctoral studies, then those who are doing the masters in education, MA education, for such learners also this is going to be a useful session. But then in general, in any subject, when we undertake the research work, project work, definitely we do the review of related literature. So any such learners can listen to this lecture and get benefit of it. So in this session, I will be talking about what is a review of related literature. Now the sources where we get, so that we can have a review of that. The other aspects that you will be going through when you do the review of related literature. And finally, I would be summing up the session by giving some of the mistakes that people do, researchers do, when they conduct the review of related literature. So with this brief introduction, let me come to the discussion part. We will start with the definition and the purpose of review of related literature. Now before coming to that, let me just take you through the steps that we do, the major steps. Like when we undertake the project work, research work, we identify the problem, then we go to the review of related literature, then we formulate the objectives, research questions, then we will have a finalization of the research design, then we go to the population sampling, collecting data, finally we will do the analysis of the data, and we will finally end up the research work by disseminating the knowledge that we gain in the form of research report. So in general, in brief, these are the steps that we usually go through. So when you undertake the research work, you will see, after identifying your problem or the variable that you are going to work on, you will do a review of the related studies, which we call the review of related literature. Now you can see on the slide, it says like this is going to be the systematic survey of research related to your topic. Now this is in very general way I have given. Now as I said, we will identify the topic, then we will see, we can also say about like a topic or the variable that we are going to work on. Say for example, academic achievement is a variable, intelligence, motivation, so there are many such variables. So once you have identified that a topic or variable, you will see the studies that are conducted on that particular variable, or the studies which are like similar to that variable. So that's why I was saying this is a survey of the research related to your topic or variable. So the very simplest maybe form of definition is that. Now why do we undertake that? See, it establishes, as you see on the slide, it will help you to establish the context, theory and the rationale for the study. Now we undertake studies, so there are various reasons for that. Now the context is also one of it. Now once you do that review of related literature, you will be able to come out with a kind of a contextual framework which would help you to support like the study which you are going to do. It will also give you like the gaps which are there in the on the topics that you have selected, on the variable that you have selected for the study. So this, once you have identified the research gap, it will help you to, what we say, give a justification of the topic that you are going to undertake, that you are going to research. Now again, when we come to the discipline of education, like it will help you to link the pedagogy, policy, learning outcomes, etc. Now, these are some of the areas that we usually work in the discipline of education, like the teaching learning process, pedagogy, maybe in policy formulations. It would also help you to one of the other variable which we usually work on is the learning outcomes of the student, academic achievement of the student. So for all these, this review will help you. So with this very brief, maybe a discussion on the definition and the purpose of this, I would jump on to the next the discussion point, that is, I have already given you a kind of an hint that these are the purposes of what we say the review of related literature, or RRL. Now let me again take your attention to the slide. Like, it identifies the gap and unexplored problems. Like, say for example, academic achievement. When we talk about academic achievement, so there can have too many studies on this variable academic achievement. So when you go through the review only, you will come to know that what all studies have been conducted, now what all studies are remaining. So that's how the research gaps flows into your the research work. There can have various areas of academic achievement which might have not studied. So that's why I was saying it would help you to identify the gap, identify the unexplored areas on the topic or the variable that you have studied. Second, it prevents duplication and builds on prior work. See, nothing can be, you cannot propose this way. You should have a kind of a scientific base. So your scientific base comes from by doing the RRL. Now the other idea is suppose somebody has done academic achievement, relation between academic achievement and maybe intelligence. Why we have to duplicate such a work, spending too much time for doing research, coming out with the same result? So that's why the RRL will help you to avoid the duplicacy of the research work. So that is the second point. The third, informs research design instruments and the variables. Now, see, you may be having some idea with you, like this is how I propose to work on. This is the research type which I intend to take up. This is these are the tools, these are the population or samples which I am going to work. Again, as I said, if you have finding any studies related to the methodology that you have selected, research type you have selected, population sample, then absolutely there is no need of again duplicating the work. Of course, there are points where we can duplicate the work, but the RRL will also give you a kind of an understanding hint that so and so studies have been conducted using so and so method, population sample, instruments, tools, etc. So that's why I was saying RRL will help you to get an idea of research design, the tools which you have to use, the variables that you can work on. Now the last one is, it just strengthens the theoretical and methodological choices. Of course, I have given an idea. We have to have a kind of a theoretical framework on the variable that you are going to work on research, the research work that you are going to undertake. Now it rests on some theoretical foundation. So while reviewing, you will also get idea about such theoretical frameworks, ideas, which of course you can take forward in your research work also. So in brief, these are some of the points which you can note down, you can take up why RRL matters. And this is very important because all the points which I was mentioning is very important when we undertake any research work or any project work. Now let us move on to the next idea. See, when we plan to do the RRL, we always think of where we will get the idea about the research work conducted on the variable that you have selected. So we have to think of where can be the sources coming from, which are the sources available so that I can search and find out. Now, as you see on the slide, there are like primary sources, peer-reviewed journals, theses, dissertations, conference papers. Few I have quoted, it doesn't end with that. So these are kind of sources which you, of course, you can refer. Like in most of the universities, in the libraries, usually they keep the copy of the thesis which is submitted to that particular university. Of course, there can be other theses also. So such theses you can refer, maybe in hard copy form. In many libraries, they are now stored in the form of what we call this soft copy form. Of course, that can also be referred. Then there are databases, like if it is in the case of discipline of education, ERIC is one, Scopus, Web of Science, JSTOR, Google Scholar. These are repositories, online repositories where the research papers, theses are uploaded. So all such databases, online repositories can be also considered to be one of the what we say the source of getting ideas on the variable that you have selected for the study. Again, when we come to our Indian context, we will see Shodh Ganga. There are a couple of initiatives by the Ministry of Education, like Shodh Ganga is one. Then many other educational institutions, organizations, they have their own repositories. And Shodh Ganga is one such repository where you will see a numerous number of theses uploaded. Now it is like students, when they submit their research report, thesis, it is also a practice that they submit a copy which can be uploaded on the Shodh Ganga repository. And the number which is at present available on Shodh Ganga is a huge number. It has crossed more than 5 lakh. So such sources, such repositories can also be, you can use. Then there are like government reports, technical reports, policy documents. Absolutely, there is no limit to that. You will see when you, what we say, get into the internet, you will see too many such documents developed by, produced by, created by various organizations, agencies, both including private and public funded organizations. So such sources can also be, you can think of. So let me just sum up that. I was talking about like where we will get the, what we say, the sources on which we can do the RRL. So these are some of the sources which you can of course refer to. Now I won't be limiting that. Couple of them I have mentioned, shown you in this slide, but there are many other repositories also. Now the next discussion point is like when we do the RRL, like it can be done both in hard copy form and in soft copy form. So when we do the RRL, there can have some strategies. Of course, see, you will see too many kind of what we say documents, report, theses, research papers related to the variable that you have selected. So you have to have some kind of a strategy which you can of course follow, so that you will be limiting to that area. Otherwise, nowadays there is no limit of what we say the soft copy form of anything. Like it can be a thesis, it can be a research paper, any policy document. So when you do the RRL, see something like as you see on the slide, you limit your scope of your RRL, then construct some search strings, something like very mathematically oriented, like when you sometimes Google on the internet, when you do some Google searching, we use some Boolean operators like and, or, not. So this would help you to limit, so that the search engine will give you only the documents which are related to the area that you are working on. You can have the synonyms, truncation, subject headings, etc. Like on the slide you are seeing teacher professional development, put it in inverted comma, so that only those variables, those documents, papers related to that area will only be listing out. Now record searches, inclusion, exclusion criteria, something which is very again related to what we say when we get into the internet world. So in a very brief manner, I have given some of the strategies which you can follow when you undertake the RRL. Now let us come to the other idea, like how you are going to organize the review. In thesis, when we prepare the thesis also, usually sometimes in the discipline of education, again in other subjects also, disciplines also, again that depends on the university where you are working. But then we have something like 5 to 6, 7, 8 maybe chapters will be there in our thesis. So usually the second chapter is going to be the RRL chapter. Now when you do that, when you write the chapter, or when you write sometimes for the what we say the research papers, you have to organize the review that you have conducted. So some of the strategies which you can follow, like patterns which you can follow. One is the chronological order. Start from the studies which are conducted in very latest studies, then you go down year wise chronologically. It can be in a thematic format also, like group studies by themes. Now it depends on the variable. If you have couple of variables in your study, of course theme wise you can have. Again, based on the research methodology type, you can have an arrangement on the basis of theoretical framework or the conceptual framework you have. So there are a couple of ways which you can follow, which would help you to organize the review that you have done relating to a variable of your research. So maybe this also you can follow. Now let us come to the some of the critiques, or like when you undertake, you have to critically evaluate the validity, reliability and the relevance of the studies. Again, as I said in the beginning, see, you have no dearth of what we say the materials, document, theses, papers available on the variable, because so many people might have done studies on the same variable which you are also planning to work on. So you have a critical judgment on any document, any paper, any thesis which you are working on or which you are selecting for that. Again, look for consistencies, contradictions and patterns. When you do that, when you do the review, like when we write the review report also, you have to look for definitely this researcher has done so and so study and this but the other researcher has done this study on the same variable, but there are inconsistencies in the result, or there can have contradictions in the result. There can have maybe a same kind of a patterning in the same result in the result. So that also you have to look. Again, differentiate between the description and synthesis, and the whole idea is like you have to synthesize the entire review that you have done. Now finally we will be coming to, like, once you do that, this would help you to really get into or formulate or identify the research gap, and that's how your research is going to be relevant for what we say, maybe for adding some new knowledge to the existing knowledge system. Again, it may contribute to improving the existing teaching learning practices, can benefit in policy formulations, etc. So you have to take care of all this, and finally then this would help you to come out with what we say the research gap and unresolved questions, and that's how your research is also going to be very relevant. I suppose you have understood the points which I have covered till now. Now let us move on to something like the theoretical and conceptual framework. Now when you undertake research also, project work also, there has to have some grounding which we call the theoretical grounding. Now where you will get that? Like as I said, if you are working on academic achievement, see the reviews, see the theoretical underpinnings of the theoretical frameworks, theories which refer to what we say the academic achievement. Now if you are struggling, sometimes the RRL will also help you to contribute in identifying the what we call the theoretical framework. Now theoretical framework explains why a variable is how it is related. Of course, as I said, we have to have that theoretical grounding for your research work or the variable that you are going to. Now once you have that, it will help you to formulate a conceptual framework also. Like as you see on the slide, conceptual framework maps variables and presumed relationship. So this would help you to see you have a theoretical framework, you have so and so variables, you will formulate a kind of a conceptual framework which would help you to link the variables, the ideas which you have got through what we say the RRL. So that's how it is going to help you in theoretical and conceptual framework. Of course, there can have other documents also which would help you in getting the theoretical framework. But of course, RRL will also give you a good understanding about the theoretical framework related to the variable. So again, use these frameworks to derive research questions and hypotheses. Of course, once we complete that, we will be coming to what we say the research questions. Then we will follow the rest of the steps as which I was mentioning in the very beginning of this session. Now, let us now come to the reporting. How you are going to write the review and referencing. Like first structure, you should have the introduction, body, organize it in a proper way, summary of the gaps, linkage to the study. Of course, RRL, as I said, you have identified the research gap. So that has to, and that's how it is linked to your study. That is what it is going to make your study relevant. Again, the next point, like critically, write critically. This is going to be very important in your research work. Of course, you have done so many reports, so many studies. You will find contradictions, inconsistencies, similarities, and you have to prove yourself. You have to synthesize the entire idea that you have got from the RRL, and you have to get critically into that so that it will help you to work on your variable. Again, the other 2 points, like you have to follow the proper citation style, the existing maybe in social sciences education APS 7th format. Then the plagiarism issues which you are of course aware about. Avoid all those plagiarism cases, etc. when you are writing. Now, let us come to the final discussion point of this session, like some of the common mistakes and some of the tips which you can follow. Some of the errors that you make when researchers do. Unfocused scope. As I said, too many documents, too many report theses. Now you have to narrow down all this entire idea. So narrow down your scope so that it will help you to what document, what thesis I have to really look for doing the RRL. Now synthesis, poor synthesization, like you have too many documents, you have to have a kind of a linkaging. So do that properly, otherwise it is not going to help you to get the research gap. Again, outdated sources, weak linkage to the problem. Again, there are so many sources, but then why we have to look for the sources which are not very relevant, which are not related to your study, etc. So this you have to definitely avoid when you are doing the RRL. Now let me also give you some kind of a practical tips or some good practices which you can follow. Like maintain a literature matrix. You have to have year wise, theme wise, as I was saying, or research methodology wise. So this would help you to really put into think together, put ideas collectively. So you should have, if you have that matrix in a very systematic form, of course this would help you. Then set alerts. If you have referring some kind of online repositories, they have the alert facility, so that if there are new studies, of course that can be, you will get the alert. Again, you may think of creating the annotated bibliography. So these are some of these tips which of course you can follow. So with this I would end the discussion here. We started with the definition, then some of the sources, then the way of writing, then maybe at the end of the session I have taken you through some of the mistakes usually the researchers make, then some of the practical solutions for such mistakes. I suppose you have idea about this. With this I would stop here. Thank you.